Hello everyone, my name is Precious and this is Reading Through the Generations, and I want to wish you a warm welcome to the second episode of a series here where I pair picture books that I've been reading with the young people in my life or on my own, and pair them with some nonfiction books for those of you who may be interested in further exploration of the same topics. So the first book I would like to share with you is called Monarch and Milkweed by Helen Frost and gorgeously illustrated by Leonid Gore. This tells the migration of the monarch butterfly and introduces young readers to their life cycle. And an integral source of their life cycle is the toxic milkweed plant. Here's some more gorgeous illustrations. Another one. And I didn't know that researchers are still trying to solve the mystery of how the monarch butterflies are able to navigate and find their way back to and from their winter homes. It says here, scientists aren't sure why one butterfly can fly all the way south, but it takes several generations to return north. Although we have learned a lot about monarch and milkweed, many mysteries remain for future scientists to explore. And Helen Frost lists some further reading and websites that young readers can explore. To go with that, I have this beautiful, wonderful book, The Milkweed Lands by Lee-Mäder, illustrated by Beverly, Duncan, an epic story of one plant, its nature and ecology. And this just further, it's the natural history of the milkweed plant, and gosh, it's just gorgeously illustrated and very easily readable, and it's just one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. But yeah, it goes through all the seasons, so you get the underground organisms. There's some more critters, and then as the landscape changes with the coming spring, you get new growth. And it talks about California's rewilding project and all the botanists. If you want a more detailed look at the coevolution between monarch butterflies and milkweed, this is your book. And then more about the butterflies. I have Chrysalis, Maria, Sibylla, Merian, and the Secrets of Metamorphosis by Todd. And this is just a very thoughtful biography of the amazing Dutch-German artist Maria, who lived during the 17th century, and in her late 40s decided to travel across the globe with her daughter to illustrate the natural fauna and flora. The cover is an example of her artwork. There's some watercolors. Here's more. her illustrations would make her a great contributor to the study of etymology, and Carl Linnaeus used many of her illustrations to help make his classification, and it also helped dispel superstitions about these creatures. And her illustrations were the first of their kind that were so detailed and described the metamorphosis and life cycles of these insects. And she went on to publish all her illustrations as well as her own scientific research. And she just was ahead of her time, and I highly recommend this book. Another illustrator that was ahead of her time was Wanda Gag. She was a children's book author and artist during the early 19th century, excuse me. She was born to Bohemian immigrants in 1893, and her life was unfortunately cut short from lung cancer. And the book is Wanda Gag, The Girl Who Lived to Draw, written and illustrated by Deborah Kogan Ray. And this is just the life, a condensed biography, if you will, of her childhood growing up in Michigan with her mother and father and 7 siblings. It was either 6 or 7 siblings. And both her parents were great artists and helped nourish her own love of the arts and her creativity. But yeah, I love these illustrations. They're just so rich. But yeah, this was she was such an amazing person. Even though her life was full of tragedy and hardship, she just kept going and didn't let that hinder her dream of becoming an artist. It talks about all her children's books that she went on to publish, which includes Millions of Cats, which is the oldest children's book to remain in publication. I believe she published that in 1928. And she was I'm going to talk about Millions of Cats in a later video because I read it for the Picture This readathon. And the nonfiction book to pair with this one is one of her diaries called Growing Pains. I believe she published many. She kept diaries throughout her whole life, and this one is the first. Believe it details her life from when she was 15 years old all the way to when she was 24. And this is just, it's little illustrations and accounts of her day, and she kept little. They were very, very poor after her father died, and she had to. Everyone was telling her to quit school to get a job so she could support her mom and her siblings, and she was very determined that all of them would stay in school. And so she had to sell stories as a way of income. And so you really get to know this young woman as she details her life, and I just think she was so inspirational. And I forgot to mention that throughout this book, Deborah Ray includes excerpts from Growing Pains, so it adds to this whole reading experience of the book. And here's a lovely photograph of Wanda with her pet cat. Deborah Kogan Ray had this to say about Wanda. I'm not sure I have the same passion as Wanda, and I definitely have not had to deal with such hard things as losing my parents and raising my siblings. I do have a passion for books, obviously, but I wonder how far I would go to keep my passion going. What are you passionate about, and how far would you go to keep following your dreams? I think that's lovely food for thought. And then, for those of you natural history lovers, I have A Guide for Beginning Fossil Hunters by Charles Collinson. And I think I got this from a bookstore in downtown Chrysalis that was going out of business. I think this is this is out of print. There is a website that you can access it from, and I'll leave that in the description down below. But this, I've always been fascinated by the fossil record and geology, archaeology, paleontology, all the ologies. And this is a great introduction to natural history. I just love the really detailed illustrations that are realistic. They're not cartoony in any way. And yeah, I've held on to this book because I just love it so much. And there's even photographs of the various marine fossils that you can find in ancient quarries. But yeah, this even tells you tips on collecting fossils and the various equipment that you need if you want to go fossil hunting yourself. It's just really, really a great educational resource for young readers. And the nonfiction book to pair with that is Wonderful Life by Stephen J. Gould, The Burgess, Shale, and the Nature of History. And this is an exploration of the Burgess Shale, which formed 530 million years ago, and it's in the Canadian Rockies, and it's basically this quarry of ancient marine fossils. All these creatures are preserved in such great condition, and these are just some really unusual organisms that are so well preserved. And I believe it's open to the public, but mostly it's for researchers only, and it's definitely on my bucket list of places to visit. This was just so fascinating of a read, and here's some photographs of the geologists and other researchers there that have made it their life's work. There's some more examples of the preserved shale. Going back to the Guide for Beginning Fossil Hunters, if you are going, if you have young people in your life, there's a wonderful accompaniment to any book on natural history, particularly fossils, are these wonderful kits that you can purchase. And this is a local company, Bears, Rocks, Minerals, and Fossils. You can buy these kits, but they have many kits that you can choose from. But you get various fossils, like here's a trilobite, for example. But you can get gemstones. I have a whole bag here. They have copper lights and geodes and arrowheads, and there's a really wonderful identification poster that you receive too. But yeah, I highly recommend, especially if you homeschool, or I've used it before when babysitting, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience to get to introduce young people to natural history, and I don't know, it's just really, really fun. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all enjoying the start to your May, and I'll see you next time. Take good care. Bye-bye.